Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own family? Someone they tolerate at gatherings only because the neighbors might talk if you weren't there. That was me for 15 years. My name is Christina Douglas, and at 68 years old, I discovered just how invisible I'd become to the people who should have loved me most. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. Because what happened that rainy October evening changed everything, not just for me, but for an entire family built on secrets and shame. The email arrived at 6:07 a.m., just as I was tying my apron to head down to the flower market. That electronic ping made my stomach tighten before I even read it. Jasmine's emails always came early, like she wanted to ensure my entire day was ruined before it even began. Mother, it started not Mom, not Christina, certainly not Dear Christina, just Mother, like I was a title rather than a person. Charles Montgomery's 75th birthday celebration is October 15th at 7 p.m. sharp. You should arrive on time and dress appropriately. The dress code is cocktail formal. Please confirm receipt. I stared at those words should and appropriately, feeling the sting of judgment even through the screen. My fingers trembled slightly as I set down my phone and looked around my tiny South Philadelphia apartment. The peeling wallpaper, the radiator that clanged all night, the single window overlooking the alley where teenagers sometimes dumped their fast food trash. This was what appropriate looked like for me now. 3 years. That's how long it had been since they'd invited me to my granddaughter Lily's birthday. 3 years of watching her grow up through Facebook photos that Jasmine posted for her society friends. Lily at ballet class. Lily at her private school gala. Never Lily with Grandma Christina. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Shane's name flashed on the screen. My son. My boy who used to climb into my lap with skinned knees and call me his best mama in the whole universe. Mom. His voice sounded thin, stressed. Did you get Jasmine's email? Good morning to you too, sweetheart. Mom, please, this is important. Dad, Charles, there's going to be major investors there. Morgan Capital. They're considering a $500 million development deal with us. That sounds wonderful for you, honey. Mom, I need you to understand. Jasmine is under enormous pressure. If you could just please don't make her uncomfortable. Wear something nice. He paused. Maybe that blue dress from Cousin Sarah's wedding. Robert, that dress is 12 years old. It's fine. Mom. Classic. Just please. For me. The pleading in his voice broke my heart. When had my strong, confident boy become this man who begged? When had he started calling his father-in-law Dad, while his own mother lived in a roach-infested apartment 20 minutes away? I'll be there, I said quietly. And Mom, maybe don't mention the flower stand. If anyone asks, just say you're retired. After he hung up, I sat on my bed and opened the closet. The blue dress hung there like a ghost of better times. I pulled it out, noting the small moth hole near the hem, the way the fabric had faded from navy to something closer to slate. But it was the best I had. In the back of the closet, behind shoes I never wore anymore, was a cardboard box labeled Michael's Things. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were his watch, his wedding ring, and a manila envelope of old papers, documents from his business partnership with Charles Montgomery back in the 70s. Jasmine had asked for these papers once, said she needed them for tax purposes. I told her I'd lost them. Something in her eager eyes had made me lie. I touched Michael's watch, remembering his strong hands, how he'd built his auto repair business from nothing, how he'd believed in honest work and treating people right. Never let them make you small, Christina, he used to say. You're worth more than all their money combined. But Michael had been gone for 15 years, and somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten his words. I'd let them make me small. I'd accepted the crumbs they threw me, the reluctant invitations, the separate table at family gatherings, the hushed embarrassment when their society friends asked about Shane's mother. As I ran my fingers over the worn envelope, something made me open it. Inside were partnership agreements, financial statements, and incorporation documents. I wasn't a business person, but even I could see Michael's name prominently displayed alongside Charles Montgomery's. equal partners in what was then called Montgomery Douglas Enterprises. Why had Shane never mentioned this? Why had Charles acted like Michael was just an old friend, not a business partner? I carefully replaced the documents, but not before taking a photo of the main partnership agreement with my phone. Something told me I might need it. The blue dress hung on the bathroom door as I showered. Tomorrow, I'd take it to the dry cleaners and pray they could work miracles. I'd spend money I didn't have to look appropriate for people who'd already decided I'd never be good enough. Looking back now, I should have thrown that email in the trash. Should have spent October 15th watching my shows with a cup of tea. But something in me, maybe it was Michael's voice. Maybe it was just stubborn hope, made me decide to go. I had no idea that God had other plans for that night. Plans that started with a broken-down Mercedes on Highway 9. The week passed in a blur of flower arrangements and budget calculations. The dress cost $42 to dry clean, almost half my grocery budget for the week. But it came back looking almost respectable. The moth hole carefully mended. The fabric steamed to a semblance of its former glory. The night before the party, I dreamed of Michael. We were young again, sitting on the hood of his beat-up Chevy, looking at the stars. "Remember who you are, Christina," he said in the dream. "Remember what we built together." I woke up with tears on my pillow and a strange sense of purpose. That morning, while arranging roses for Mrs. Goldstein's anniversary, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Douglas, this is Maxwell Johnson. I was your husband's attorney. I've been trying to reach you for years. It's about Michael's estate. Please call me." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Maxwell Johnson. I remembered him, a tall, distinguished black man with salt and pepper hair who'd attended Michael's funeral. He'd tried to talk to me afterward, but Jasmine had intercepted him, saying I was too distraught to discuss business matters. I'd never heard from him again until now, before I could decide whether to call him. My phone rang. Shane again. "Mom, just checking you're still coming tonight. And remember what we talked about. Okay? I'll be there. Shane, don't worry. Great. And Jasmine says she arranged for you to sit with some of the other family members." The way he said other family members made me wonder exactly who he meant. Not at the main table, clearly. "That's fine, honey. I'll see you tonight." After we hung up, I tried calling Maxwell Johnson, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a message with my number, then went back to my flowers, wondering what Michael's attorney could possibly want after all these years. By 4:00 p.m. on October 15th, the sky had turned the color of old pewter, and rain was starting to spit against my windshield. My ancient Honda Civic, bought used in 2010 and held together with prayer and duct tape, wheezed as I merged onto Highway 9. The blue dress hung in a dry cleaning bag in the back seat. $42 I couldn't afford, making it look almost respectable. I'd left early, giving myself an extra hour to get to Rittenhouse Square. Jasmine would find something to criticize no matter what, but at least she couldn't say I was late. The radio played oldies, and I hummed along to Stand By Me, trying to calm my nerves. That's when I saw her, about 2 miles past the Brookfield exit. A black Mercedes sat on the shoulder with its hazard lights blinking. Smoke rose from under the hood, and a woman stood beside it, cell phone pressed to her ear, her expensive suit getting soaked in the rain. She was young, maybe late 30s, with the kind of polish that came from money. Real money, not the desperate kind Jasmine tried so hard to project. I should have kept driving. Every minute I stopped would be another mark against me in Jasmine's mental ledger. But something about the woman's frustrated gestures, the way she kept looking at her dead phone screen, reminded me of myself the day Michael died stranded at the hospital with no way home, invisible to everyone rushing past. I pulled over. The woman looked up, surprised, as I rolled down my window. "Need help, honey? My phone's dead, and I don't know what's wrong with this damn car." Her voice had a slight Boston accent, educated, but not snobbish. "I have a critical meeting at 7:00. Pop the hood. Let me take a look." She stared at me, this old woman, in a carefully pressed but obviously dated outfit like I'd offered to perform brain surgery. "Do you know about cars?" My husband ran an auto shop for 30 years. I picked up a thing or two. The rain was getting heavier as I grabbed Michael's old toolkit from my trunk. I'd never had the heart to remove it. The Mercedes engine was a thing of beauty, even smoking and overheated. It took me less than a minute to spot the problem: a blown radiator hose. "You're not going anywhere without a new hose," I told her. "But I can do a temporary fix to get you to a shop." "How?" I pulled out the electrical tape Michael always swore by. "This will hold for maybe 20 miles if you go easy. There's a good shop off exit 31. Honest folks who won't overcharge you because of the car." As I worked wrapping the split hose carefully, the woman watched me with something like amazement. "I'm Alexandra Morgan," she said finally. "Christina Douglas. Christina, why did you stop? Everyone else just drove past." I tightened the last wrap of tape, my hands black with engine grease. "Because, honey, I know what it's like to be stuck with nobody to help." The fix took 15 minutes, but by the time I finished, my dress was splattered with oil, and my carefully styled hair hung limp from the rain. Alexandra pulled out a business card from her purse, thick cardstock, elegant font. "Please take this. I owe you dinner at the very least. Where were you heading? I've made you late." "Just a family thing," I said, sliding the card into my pocket without really looking at it. "Birthday party up in Rittenhouse Square." Something flickered in her eyes. "The Montgomery estate, you know it?" "I'm familiar with the family. Charles Montgomery's birthday. Right, big society event?" I nodded, trying to wipe the grease off my hands with an old napkin. "My son married into the family." "Then we're going to the same place. I'm the 700 yours meeting." She looked at my oil-stained dress, then at her watch. "Oh, God, you're going to be late because of me." "It's fine. They expect me to disappoint them anyway." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Alexandra's expression changed, something sharp and knowing entering her eyes. "Follow me," she said. "If anyone gives you trouble about being late, tell them you were with me." I wanted to tell her it wouldn't matter, that Jasmine would find a way to punish me regardless, but Alexandra was already getting into her car, and I realized I now had exactly 12 minutes to make a 20-minute drive. As I followed her Mercedes through the rain, I couldn't help but think about the partnership documents in Michael's box. Montgomery Douglas Enterprises. Equal partners. Why had that part of history been erased, and why was Maxwell Johnson trying to reach me now? After all these years, my phone dinged with a text message at a red light. Maxwell Johnson again. "Mrs. Douglas, it's urgent. I speak with you before tonight's event. Please call." Before I could respond, the light turned green, and Alexandra's Mercedes accelerated ahead. Whatever Maxwell wanted would have to wait. I was already going to be late. The Montgomery estate squatted on Rittenhouse Square like a monument to old money, all limestone and leaded glass, with gates that belonged on a palace. By the time I pulled up, 45 minutes late, my Honda looked like something the gardener would drive, and even he probably had something nicer. The security guard at the gate looked at me like I'd taken a wrong turn from the homeless shelter. "Name it Christina Douglas. I'm Shane Douglas's mother." He scrolled through his tablet, frowning. "You're not on the VIP list. I have you down for general admission. You'll need to park in the auxiliary lot." The auxiliary lot was behind the service buildings, a quarter-mile walk from the main house. As I parked between a catering van and a landscaping truck, I caught my reflection in the side mirror. The rain had destroyed my hair. The oil stains on my dress looked like I'd been working under a car, which I had, and my face had that particular shade of exhaustion that no amount of drugstore makeup could hide. The walk to the main house felt like a march to execution. I could hear the party laughter, clinking glasses, a string quartet playing something elegant, 200 of Philadelphia's finest, and me looking like I'd crawled out of a dumpster. Jasmine appeared at the service entrance before I could knock. She stood there in a white designer gown that probably cost more than I made in a year, diamonds dripping from her ears, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. "What have you done, Christina? You look like a bag lady, a literal bag lady. Do you have any idea who's here? The mayor, the Worthington's Morgan Capital?" She said the last name like it should mean something profound to me. "I stopped to help someone whose car broke down. Don't be cute with me, Christina. This is exactly why Shane didn't want—" She stopped herself, but I knew how that sentence ended. Why Shane didn't want me here. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in, and pulled me through the service hallway. We passed the kitchen staff, who averted their eyes with the practiced discretion of people who'd seen too much rich people drama. "You can't be seen like this. We'll put you at the auxiliary staff table." The auxiliary staff, the nannies and drivers. They have a table in the back. You'll fit right in. We emerged into the main ballroom, and for a moment, I forgot my humiliation. The room was magnificent crystal chandeliers, gold-leafed moldings, tables draped in silk, and there was Shane, my son, standing near the bar in a tuxedo, laughing at something Charles Montgomery was saying. He looked so handsome, so successful, so much like his father. If Michael had been born to money instead of earning it with his hands. His eyes met mine across the room. I saw the flash of horror, quickly suppressed, as he took in my appearance. He started to move toward me, but Jasmine's hand on his arm stopped him. She whispered something, and he nodded, turning back to his conversation. That's when I saw her, Lily, my granddaughter, 5 years old and perfect in a pink party dress. She broke away from her nanny and ran toward me, arms outstretched. Grandma Christina, Grandma Christina. For one precious moment, I had my arms full of grandchild, breathing in her little girl's smell of strawberry shampoo and innocence. "Hello, my precious girl. I missed you. Mommy said you might not come. I'll always come for you, sweetheart." Jasmine materialized beside us like an avenging angel. "Lily, darling, let's not bother Grandma right now. She needs to freshen up. But I want to sit with Grandma." "Grandma has her own special seat," Jasmine said, her smile sharp as glass. "Now go back to Melissa." Lily was led away, looking back at me with confused eyes. Jasmine steered me to a table in the farthest corner, partially hidden by a potted palm. 3 nannies and 2 drivers sat there, looking uncomfortable in their formal clothes. "Enjoy the party," Jasmine said, her voice dripping honey-coated poison. "Try not to draw attention to yourself." As she walked away, I sank into my chair, feeling every one of my 68 years. Through the palm fronds, I could see the main table where Charles Montgomery held court, where Shane and Jasmine played the perfect couple, where my granddaughter sat like a little princess, and I sat with the help, invisible again, wondering why I'd ever thought this night would be different. The nannies and drivers at my table were kind enough to pretend I belonged there. Marcus, the Worthington's driver, even poured me water from the pitcher. We didn't rate champagne service. I sat there watching the real party happen 40 feet away, separated by an ocean of social hierarchy. "First time at one of these?" asked Melissa, Lily's nanny, a young woman with tired eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I'm Shane's mother." The table went silent. They all knew who I was, the grandmother who wasn't allowed to babysit, the mother-in-law Jasmine complained about to anyone who'd listen. Melissa touched my hand gently, a small gesture of solidarity from one invisible woman to another. Charles Montgomery stood up, tapping his champagne flute. The room fell silent. At 75, he still commanded attention, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who'd never worked a day of physical labor but considered himself self-made because he'd turned his father's millions into billions. "Friends, family, esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice carrying easily through the ballroom. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating my birthday. It's about celebrating the future of Montgomery Industries." I watched Shane stand beside him, my boy looking so proud, so eager to please this man who'd become more of a father to him than his actual father's memory. "As many of you know," Charles continued, "we're on the verge of our most ambitious project, yet a $500 million development that will reshape Philadelphia's skyline. And tonight, we hope to welcome our partners from Morgan Capital into the Montgomery family." A murmur ran through the crowd. Morgan Capital, even I'd heard of them. They were the kind of money that made other money nervous. "Their representative should be arriving any moment," Charles said, checking his Rolex. "And when she does, we'll show her what Montgomery hospitality really means." Jasmine stood up, radiant in her designer gown. "While we wait, I'd like to say something about family values. At Montgomery Industries, we believe in tradition, in knowing where you come from and who belongs at your table. Her eyes flickered toward my corner so quickly I might have imagined it. "We're selective about who we do business with because we're selective about who we are." The crowd applauded. I shrunk deeper into my chair, wishing I could disappear entirely. Through the palm fronds, I saw a familiar figure, David Parker, one of Michael's old accountants. He'd aged well, still distinguished in his 70s. Our eyes met, and he started walking toward me, but his face changed when he recognized me from curiosity to something like shock, maybe even fear. Jasmine intercepted him, guiding him toward the bar with practiced ease. "Your daughter-in-law's something else," Marcus muttered beside me. "She's protective of her family," I said, the automatic defense bitter on my tongue. "That what you call it?" Before I could answer, there was a commotion at the main entrance. The massive double doors opened, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Charles straightened his tie. Jasmine touched her diamonds. Shane pulled at his cuffs, a nervous habit from childhood, but nobody entered. The moment stretched, awkward and tense. Charles's smile began to falter. Jasmine whispered something to the event coordinator, who scurried toward the entrance. That's when I remembered Michael and the life we'd built together before everything fell apart. He'd started with nothing, just a kid from Fishtown with grease under his nails and a dream. When he met Charles Montgomery in 1975, they'd been equals two young men with ambition. Michael had even invested in Charles's first big project, putting up half the capital from the sale of his father's house. "Whatever happened to those papers?" Michael had asked me once near the end, when the cancer had eaten away everything but his worry for my future. "The partnership documents. They're important. Christina, worth something." But after he died, grief had swallowed everything. Shane had been in college, needing tuition. The medical bills had taken our savings, and when Jasmine had appeared beautiful, sophisticated, everything I wasn't, she'd swept Shane into her world so fast I could barely breathe. "Mom never talks about Dad," I'd overheard Shane tell Jasmine once. "I think it hurts too much." But that wasn't true. I didn't talk about Michael because Jasmine had made it clear that auto mechanics didn't belong in her family narrative. She'd rewritten Shane's history, erasing the boy who'd grown up in his father's shop, who'd known the name of every tool before he knew the alphabet. A server finally approached our table not with champagne, but with the house salad, wilted lettuce, and cheap dressing. While the real guests dined on lobster thermidor, I pushed it around my plate, my appetite gone. Grandma Christina Lilly had escaped again, running toward me with a crayon drawing. "I made this for you." It was a picture of two stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. "It's us," she announced proudly. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Jasmine appeared like a storm cloud. "Lily, I told you," but her scolding was cut short by another commotion at the entrance. This time, someone actually entered, and my heart stopped. It was Alexandra Morgan, transformed from the rain-soaked woman on Highway 9 into something that made even Jasmine look underdressed. She stood in the doorway, scanning the room with those sharp eyes, looking for something, looking for someone, looking. I realized with a sudden chill, for me. At that moment, watching Alexandra Morgan scan the room, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. You know that feeling when you realize your whole life is about to change, when you can actually feel the ground shifting under your feet. That was me, clutching my granddaughter's drawing while my daughter-in-law's perfect world started to crack. Have you ever been made to feel worthless by your own family, like you're an embarrassment they have to tolerate? If you have, then you understand why what happened next felt like divine justice. Alexandra Morgan commanded the room without saying a word. She wore a black Saint Laurent suit that whispered money. Her hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but probably cost $300 to achieve. The entire Montgomery crowd, people who wouldn't notice if their own houses were on fire, stopped mid-conversation to stare. Charles Montgomery practically sprinted across the ballroom, his age forgotten in the presence of $2 billion worth of investment potential. Jasmine glided behind him, having deposited Lily back with her nanny, her smile so bright it could have powered the chandelier. "Miss Morgan," Charles boomed, extending his hand. "We're so honored you could make it." "Mr. Montgomery." Alexandra's handshake was brief, professional. I apologize for my lateness. I had car trouble on Highway 9. Oh, how dreadful, Jasmine gushed. I hope nothing serious. It could have been. Fortunately, a good Samaritan stopped to help. Alexandra's eyes were already moving past them, searching the crowd. Without her, I'd still be standing in the rain. Well, thank God for the kindness of strangers, Charles said. Now, let me introduce you to our board members in a moment. First, Alexandra's tone was pleasant but firm, the voice of someone who'd never been interrupted in her life. I need to thank the woman who helped me. I believe she said she was coming here. Jasmine's smile flickered. Here to our party. Yes, Christina something. Douglas, I think. The silence that followed could have choked a horse. Charles's face went through several expressions: confusion, calculation, then a forced joviality that fooled no one. Christina, our Christina, he said like I was a family pet. I didn't realize she's Robert's mother, Jasmine said quickly. She's around here somewhere. Here around here, somewhere. Alexandra's eyebrow arched slightly. At your father-in-law's birthday celebration. And you don't know where your mother-in-law is. I should have stayed quiet. Should have let Jasmine squirm. But Lily chose that moment to point directly at me and announce in her piping voice, Grandma Christina's over there with the nannies. 200 heads turned toward my corner. I felt like a spotlight had been turned on, exposing every stain on my dress, every gray hair that had escaped my ruined styling, every year of being deemed not good enough. Alexandra's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went cold. She walked toward me, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. Charles and Jasmine scrambled after her, their carefully choreographed evening spinning out of control. Mrs. Douglas. Alexandra extended her hand to me, ignoring the palm tree I was hidden behind, the shabby table, the way the servers had clearly been instructed to treat us like furniture. I was hoping to find you. I stood, aware of how I looked, how I smelled faintly of motor oil, how my dress hung wrong after getting wet. Miss Morgan, your car make it okay. Perfect. 20 miles to exit 31, just like you said. The shop owner, Mike, I think said you'd sent several people his way over the years. Said you never took a finder's fee. Good people don't need fees to help each other. No, she said, looking directly at Jasmine. They don't. Jasmine inserted herself between us, smooth as silk. Mother, why don't you go freshen up? You look a bit weathered. She looks like someone who stopped in the rain to help a stranger, Alexandra said, which is more than I can say for the 3 Mercedes and 2 BMWs that passed me without slowing down. Well, Christina's always been very hands-on, Jasmine said, making it sound like a disease. She used to work at her husband's auto shop, very blue-collar, salt of the earth, you know. Her husband's auto shop, Alexandra tilted her head. You mean Michael Douglas of Douglas Automotive. The name hung in the air. Jasmine blinked. You knew him. I know of him. He was one of the original investors in Montgomery Industries, wasn't he? Charles, back in '75. She turned to face the now pale Charles. My team pulled the records during our due diligence. Charles's face had gone ashen. That was a long time ago. Michael passed away years ago. 15 years ago, I said quietly. Cancer. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Douglas, and somehow the way she said it made it feel fresh, like someone actually cared. His initial investment would be worth quite a lot today, I imagine. Michael was bought out, Charles said quickly. Too quickly. Everything was handled properly. I'm sure it was. Alexandra's smile was sharp as winter. Mrs. Douglas, would you join me for a drink? I'd love to hear more about your husband. Mother really should, Jasmine started. I wasn't asking you. Alexandra's voice could have frozen hell. I was asking Mrs. Douglas, who, I might add, is the only person at this party who's shown me genuine kindness without knowing who I was or what I could do for them. She offered me her arm like I was someone who mattered. Shall we? I looked at Jasmine's stunned face, at Shane's confusion, at Charles's barely controlled panic. Then I took Alexandra Morgan's arm and let her lead me into the light. Alexandra Morgan led me to the main bar like I was visiting royalty. Not a woman in an oil-stained dress who'd been hidden with the help. The crowd parted for us, or rather for her, and I caught glimpses of familiar faces twisted in confusion. Who was this bedraggled old woman on the billionaire's arm? Champagne, Alexandra asked me. I wouldn't know the difference between champagne and ginger ale, I admitted. Honesty, how refreshing. She ordered 2 glasses of something French that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Tell me about Michael. He was a good man, worked hard, built his business from nothing, and his partnership with Charles Montgomery. I hesitated. We were standing in the man's house, drinking his champagne, surrounded by his guests. But something in Alexandra's eyes told me she already knew more than she was saying. They were friends once, young men with big dreams. Michael put up half the money for Charles's first development, sold his father's house to do it. Do you have documentation of this investment? Some old papers. Jasmine asked for them once, but something felt wrong about it. Alexandra nodded slowly. Your instincts were good, Mrs. Douglas. She leaned closer. Christina, there's something you should know about why I'm really here tonight. But before she could continue, Jasmine materialized with Shane in tow, her face a mask of controlled fury wrapped in a society smile. Alexandra, may I call you Alexandra? We should really discuss the Morgan Capital proposal. After all, that's why you're here. Is it? Alexandra took a sip of champagne. I thought I was here for Charles's birthday. Of course, but Mrs. Ashford. Alexandra's voice cut through Jasmine's babbling like a blade. Why is your mother-in-law sitting with the hired help? The question landed like a bomb. The conversations around us stopped. Even the string quartet seemed to play quieter. She mother prefers, I prefer. I found my voice. 15 years of silence breaking like a dam. I prefer to sit with my family. I prefer to know my granddaughter. I prefer not to be hidden like some shameful secret. Mother, you're being dramatic, Shane said, but his voice was weak, uncertain. When was the last time you invited me to Sunday dinner? Shane, when was the last time Lily was allowed to visit me? You live in South Philadelphia, Jasmine said as if it were a disease. The neighborhood isn't safe for Lily. The neighborhood where Shane grew up, where his father taught him to change oil and fix engines, that unsafe neighborhood. That's enough. Charles Montgomery had joined us, his commanding presence trying to regain control. This is neither the time nor place. Actually, it's the perfect time and place. Alexandra interrupted. You see, Mr. Montgomery, Morgan Capital doesn't just investigate finances. We investigate character. And what I'm seeing here tells me everything I need to know about your family's values. She raised her voice slightly, not shouting, but ensuring everyone could hear. This remarkable woman stopped in a storm to help a stranger. She got on her hands and knees in the rain to fix my car, ruined her dress, made herself late to your party. And how do you repay her kindness? You hide her in a corner. You're ashamed of her because she worked for a living. Because she doesn't have the right clothes or the right address. Now see here, Charles started. I'm not finished. Alexandra's voice could have cut glass. You want $500 million from my firm? Let me tell you what I see. I see a family that values appearance over substance, that treats their own blood like servants, that's so morally bankrupt they can't even recognize genuine goodness when it's standing right in front of them. The room was dead silent. 200 of Philadelphia's elite holding their breath. Furthermore, Alexandra continued, pulling out her phone, my legal team has been reviewing some interesting documents regarding Michael Douglas's initial investment in Montgomery Industries documents that suggest his shares were never properly transferred. Documents that indicate his estate, meaning Christina might still own a significant portion of this company. Charles's face went from pale to gray. That's impossible. Everything was handled by your lawyers, the ones who also happen to represent your interests. How convenient. David Parker, Michael's old accountant, stepped out of the crowd. I hadn't even realized he'd been listening. I tried to contact Mrs. Douglas about this matter several times over the years, he said, his voice shaking slightly. Somehow, my messages never seemed to reach her. Because we were protecting her, Jasmine said desperately. She was grieving. The paperwork was complicated. Protecting her? Alexandra laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean protecting yourselves from the possibility that a flower seller from South Philly might own more of Montgomery Industries than you do. She turned to me, her voice gentling. Christina, I think it's time you knew the truth. Your husband didn't just invest in Montgomery Industries. According to the original partnership agreement, he owned 51%. The champagne glass slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the marble floor like my entire understanding of the last 15 years. The shattered champagne glass at my feet seemed to wake everyone from their trance. A server rushed forward to clean it up, but Alexandra held up her hand, stopping him. "Leave it," she said. "Let everyone see what happens when you shock a woman with the truth about her stolen inheritance." "This is preposterous," Charles sputtered, his face now purple with rage or fear. Maybe both. "Michael Douglas was bought out in 1982. I have the paperwork." "Forged paperwork," David Parker interrupted, stepping fully into our circle. "I've been carrying the original documents for 15 years, waiting for the chance to give them to Christina. Every time I tried to approach her, someone from your family intervened." He pulled a leather portfolio from his jacket. "The real papers, Mrs. Douglas notarized, witnessed, filed with the Delaware Secretary of State. Your husband never sold his shares. He couldn't. The partnership agreement required both spouses' signatures for any transfer over 25%. My legs felt weak. Alexandra guided me to a chair not at the servants' table, but at the main table, right in the center of everything. "You're lying." Jasmine's voice had gone shrill. "This is some kind of shakedown." "Jasmine," Shane said quietly, and something in his tone made everyone look at him. "Stop." "What? Just stop." My son looked older suddenly, tired. "I knew something was wrong when Charles made me sign those papers after Michael died. Papers about Mom's pension. You said it was to help her, but she never saw a penny. Did she? Shane, you don't understand. I understand that you've been lying to me for 15 years, that you made me complicit in stealing from my own mother." Lily broke free from her nanny again, running to me. This time, no one stopped her. She climbed into my lap, and I held her tight, breathing in her innocence while the world burned around us. "Grandma, why is everyone upset?" "Sometimes, sweetheart, the truth makes people uncomfortable." Alexandra addressed the room, her voice carrying to every corner. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing something remarkable, the exposure of one of Philadelphia's greatest frauds. For 15 years, the Montgomery family has been built on stolen money. Christina Douglas isn't just Shane's embarrassing mother. She's the majority owner of Montgomery Industries." The room erupted. Phones appeared. Pictures were taken. Whispers rose to a roar. Victoria looked like she might faint. Charles grabbed a chair for support. "This can't be legal," he gasped. "The statute of limitations doesn't apply to ongoing fraud," Alexandra said smoothly. "Every dividend you've paid yourself. Every decision made without Christina's consent. Every year you've filed false corporate documents, it's all actionable." She turned to me. "Christina, you have choices. You can pursue criminal charges. You can demand 15 years of back dividends, which by my quick calculation would be approximately $40 million. You can take your rightful place as majority shareholder. 40 million, the number didn't even seem real. I'd been choosing between groceries and electricity bills while sitting on $40 million, or, Alexandra continued, you can negotiate, but from a position of power this time. David Parker opened his leather portfolio with the reverence of a priest handling scripture. The room remained frozen 200 of Philadelphia's elite, watching a flower seller's accountant destroy their understanding of power. "There's more," David said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Michael Douglas didn't just own 51% of Montgomery Industries. He also left a second will, one that Charles Montgomery personally witnessed and then concealed." Charles's face went from purple to white so fast I thought he might have a stroke. "That's a lie." "Is it?" David pulled out a yellow document. "Your signature is right here. Mr. Montgomery, December 15th, 2008, 3 months before Michael died. You visited him in the hospital. Remember, you promised to take care of Christina." "Dad," Shane's voice cracked like a teenager's. "You saw Michael before he died. You told me you were in Tokyo." Charles's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. David continued reading. In the event of my death, all shares, holdings, and interests in Montgomery Industries are to be held in trust for my wife, Christina Douglas, with full voting rights and dividend payments. Upon her death, said shares will pass to our son, Shane Douglas. He paused. Not Shane Montgomery. Michael never acknowledged the name change. Jasmine had gone silent, calculating behind her tears. I could see her mind working, trying to find an angle, an escape route. Furthermore, David read, if any attempt is made to deprive Christina of her rightful inheritance, if any coercion or fraud is perpetrated against her, all shares revert immediately to the Michael Douglas Foundation for Vocational Education, a charity supporting blue-collar workers' children. The trap Michael had laid from his deathbed was beautiful. Even dying, even knowing Charles's nature, he'd protected me. The foundation doesn't exist, Charles said desperately. It does now, Alexandra interjected. I incorporated it this afternoon after David contacted me. The paperwork was filed at 3:47 p.m. Christina is the sole trustee. But Mom, Shane interrupted, confusion clear in his voice. If Dad owned 51%, why were we never rich? Why did we live paycheck to paycheck? David answered before I could. Because in 1975, Montgomery Industries was just two young men with a dream. Your father's investment was $50,000 from selling his father's house. The company barely broke even for years. Michael never took dividends. He reinvested everything or lived off his auto shop income. The real value came after 2009, Alexandra added. After Michael died, that's when Montgomery Industries exploded the riverfront development, the casino contracts, the state building projects. The 51% that was worth maybe $200,000 when Michael died is now worth over $200 million. And they never told us. Shane's voice was hollow. Mom, you've been living in poverty while sitting on $200 million. You planned this. Jasmine turned on me. You've been planning this all along. No, I said simply. I've been selling flowers and missing my granddaughter. But Michael knew what you were. All of you. He knew if he died, you'd try to steal from me. So he made sure you'd hang yourselves with your own greed. The original will, David continued, also contained a personal letter. May I, Christina? I nodded, not trusting my voice. David's voice gentled as he read Michael's words. My dearest Christina, if you're hearing this, it means they've finally shown their true colors. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you myself, but I knew David would find a way. Don't let them make you small. My love, you were always the strongest of us all. Take what's yours, not for revenge, but for justice. And remember, you're worth more than all their money combined. All my love, Michael. I was crying now, not caring who saw. Lily patted my cheek with her small hand. Don't cry, Grandma. These are good tears, baby. So what happens now? Charles asked, his voice defeated. Now, I stood up, still holding Lily. Now you face a choice. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. 200 of Philadelphia's elite, waiting to see what the flower seller would do with her newfound power. We can do this the hard way: criminal charges for fraud, forensic accounting for 15 years of stolen dividends, public humiliation in every newspaper from here to New York. Or, Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper, or we do this my way, the right way, the way Michael would have wanted. I sat Lily down gently and walked to the center of the room, addressing everyone. 15 years ago, I lost my husband, but I didn't just lose him. I lost my son to shame, my dignity to snobbery, my place in my own family to greed. I looked directly at Charles and Jasmine. You didn't just steal money. You stole years. Years I can't get back. Years of Lily's life I missed. But Michael taught me something. He said, the best revenge against people who think you're nothing is to become something they never expected. So here's what's going to happen. I turned to Shane. You're going to remember who you are, Michael Douglas's son, a man who knew the value of honest work. You're going to stop being ashamed of where you came from. To Jasmine, you're going to learn what it means to earn something instead of taking it. 500 hours of community service at the South Philadelphia Women's Shelter. Real work, not just writing checks. To Charles, you're going to retire, effective immediately. The board will restructure with me as majority shareholder. And if we refuse, Charles asked, then David files the criminal complaint he's been drafting for 15 years. Delaware has no statute of limitations on felony fraud over $1 million. You've stolen $40 million. The math was simple. The choice was obvious. But know this, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it for Lily. So she grows up knowing that money isn't everything, that kindness matters more than class, that her grandmother might sell flowers, but she owns an empire, and that her grandfather, I touched the papers David held, loved us enough to protect us, even from beyond the grave. The ballroom was silent except for Lily's voice. Grandma's a superhero, from the mouths of babes, as Michael used to say. The silence that followed my ultimatum was so complete I could hear the caterers in the kitchen, still preparing food for a party that had become a reckoning. Then Jasmine did something I'd never seen before. She laughed. Not her usual tinkling society laugh, but something raw and bitter. You think you've won? She stood up, her designer dress wrinkled, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. You think you can just walk in here and take everything? I'm not taking anything, Jasmine. I'm reclaiming what was already mine. Yours. Her voice rose to a shriek. You know what was yours. A flower stand, a 2-room apartment, a husband who died broke. We gave you more than you ever deserved. Jasmine, stop. Shane's voice cut through her tirade. He walked over to me, and for the first time in years, I saw my boy. Not Charles's protege, not Jasmine's husband, but Michael's son. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His voice broke. I knew something was wrong. Deep down, I knew, but it was easier to believe their lies than face what we'd done to you. Shane, don't you dare, Jasmine started. No. He turned on her, and I saw Michael's strength in his spine. No more. You made me ashamed of my father, a man who built something from nothing, a man who taught me that integrity matters more than income. You made me change my name because Douglas wasn't prestigious enough. He looked at the crowd, then back at me. I want to be Shane Douglas again, if you'll let me. Oh, Shane. I reached up to touch his face. You were always Shane Douglas. You just forgot for a while. This is touching, Charles said, his voice dripping sarcasm. But legally, you're finished, Alexandra interrupted. I've been recording this entire conversation, every admission of fraud, every confession of theft. My legal team is already preparing the documentation. She pulled out her phone, showing a recording app running. Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state for private conversations, but this is a public gathering with over 200 witnesses. Every word is admissible. Charles staggered to a chair. The king of Philadelphia real estate reduced to a frightened old man who'd built his empire on stolen foundations. There's something else, David said, pulling out one more document. Michael left a provision specifically for his grandchildren. Lily perked up at this. For me, your grandfather never met you, sweetheart. I told her, my voice softening. But he loved you anyway. He set aside something special just for you. David read from the document. For my future grandchildren, should I not live to meet them? An education trust to be managed by Christina with one condition: they must spend one summer working in a real job, retail, food service, manual labor. They must learn what their parents might forget, that every person who works for a living deserves respect. That's manipulation, Jasmine spat. That's wisdom, I corrected her. Michael wanted his grandchildren to understand what we understood, that there's dignity in all honest work. Lily tugged on my dress. Grandma, does this mean I get to work at your flower stand? If you want to, sweetheart. I want to. Can I start tomorrow? Even Jasmine's stone heart seemed to crack at her daughter's enthusiasm. Please, Mom, Shane said quietly. Give us a chance. Let us earn your forgiveness. I looked around the room at the society people who'd ignored me, at the servants who'd shown me kindness, at Alexandra, who'd changed everything, at David, who'd waited 15 years to deliver justice. "All right," I said. "Here are my terms. Non-negotiable." I counted on my fingers. 1 full forensic audit of the last 15 years. Every penny accounted for. 2, the $40 million in stolen dividends goes to the Michael Douglas Foundation. 3, I take my rightful place as majority shareholder with Alexandra Morgan as my advisor. 4, Sunday dinners every week at my apartment in South Philly. You'll eat my pot roast and like it. Your apartment. Jasmine looked horrified. My apartment, where Shane grew up, where Michael lived, where real life happens. 5, I continued. Family therapy. All of us. Even Lily. So she can understand what healthy families look like. 6, Jasmine does her community service and learns what real struggle looks like. 7, Charles retires and makes a public statement acknowledging the fraud. "And if we agree to all that," Shane asked, "then we start over. Not as the family you tried to create all surface and no substance, but as the family Michael would have wanted. Complicated. Imperfect, but honest." "I can't," Charles said. The shame. I walked over to him. "You want to talk about shame? Try being hidden at your granddaughter's birthday party. Try being told you're an embarrassment. Try watching your son pretend you don't exist. That's shame, Charles. What you're feeling, that's just consequences." Jasmine stood up slowly. "If I do the community service, the therapy, all of it, you'll let Shane remain in the business. Shane can earn his place like everyone else, but he'll do it as Shane Douglas, not as your puppet." She looked at her daughter, at her husband, at the ruins of her perfect world. "Then I agree." "Jasmine," Charles started. "It's over, Dad," she said quietly. "We lost the moment we decided Christina was worthless. We just didn't know it yet." One by one, they agreed, and as they did, I felt Michael beside me, finally at peace. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of legal meetings, forensic accountants, and painful revelations. The full extent of Charles's deception was worse than anyone had imagined. Not only had he hidden Michael's ownership stake, but he'd systematically diverted company profits into offshore accounts, cheated his other investors, and lied on tax returns for years. David Parker became my financial guardian angel, working tirelessly to unravel 15 years of complex fraud. Alexandra Morgan stayed true to her word, not only advising me but also using Morgan Capital's considerable influence to smooth the transition. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles or the board meetings. It was watching Shane come to terms with how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. Charles had been grooming him since Michael's death, positioning him as the next in line while systematically erasing Michael's legacy. "I don't know who I am anymore, Mom," Shane confessed during one of our private dinners. We'd started meeting weekly, just the two of us, trying to rebuild what had been broken. "I've been Shane Montgomery for so long." "You're Michael Douglas's son," I told him. "You have his eyes, his laugh, his way of solving problems. That didn't disappear just because you changed your name." Lily was the easiest to reconnect with. Children forgive so readily. She started spending Saturday mornings at my flower stand, learning the names of different blossoms, creating her own little arrangements that I sold to delighted customers. "These are Lily's special bouquets." I'd tell them, $10 each, artist signed. Jasmine was the surprise. I'd expected resistance, bitterness, maybe even sabotage. But something broke in her that night at the party, some carefully constructed facade she'd been maintaining her entire life. Her first day at the South Philadelphia Women's Shelter. She showed up in designer clothes and 4-inch heels. By the 3rd week, she was wearing jeans and sneakers, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her hands raw from cleaning bathrooms and cooking meals. "There's a woman there," she told me hesitantly during our second family therapy session. "Marissa. She has 2 master's degrees. She was a marketing executive until her husband died and left her with medical debt. 3 months later, she was homeless. She could have been me. If things had gone differently, she could have been me." It was the first crack in her armor, the first hint that there might be a real person beneath the polished veneer. Charles was the hardest. Decades of entitlement and self-importance couldn't be undone in a few months. He agreed to retire, to make a public statement, to step away from the company, but his eyes remained cold, calculating. He was biding his time, looking for weakness, waiting for an opportunity to regain control. But Michael had been smarter. The legal documents were airtight. The second will, with its provisions for the foundation, meant that any attempt to challenge my authority would result in Charles losing everything. He was trapped by his own greed. One day, about 2 months after the party, I arrived at the Montgomery Industries headquarters, now officially renamed Douglas Montgomery Group, for a board meeting. The security guard, who had once treated me like an intruder, now stood to attention. "Good morning, Mrs. Douglas." "Good morning, Kevin. How's your mother doing? Did the treatment help her arthritis?" "Yes, ma'am. Those herbal compresses you suggested worked wonders." This was my small rebellion, remembering names, asking about families, treating everyone with the same respect regardless of their position. The cleaning staff, the security guards, the administrative assistants, they were all invited to share their ideas, their concerns, their lives. The boardroom fell silent when I entered. 12 men and women in expensive suits, most of whom had been Charles's loyal soldiers for decades. They'd been skeptical at first, this flower seller suddenly in charge of a $400 million company. But I'd surprised them. I might not have known the financial jargon or the corporate politics, but I knew people, and business, at its heart, is about people. "Good morning," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Before we start, I'd like to introduce our newest board member." All eyes turned to the door as Melissa Lewis, Lily's former nanny, walked in. She looked nervous, but determined in her new suit, one I'd helped her choose. "This is Melissa Lewis, our new Director of Community Engagement. She holds a master's degree in social work that she's been unable to use because of the crippling cost of childcare. She's been raising other people's children while putting her own dreams on hold. Not anymore." I could see the surprise on their faces. A nanny on the board, but they learned not to underestimate me. Melissa will be overseeing the Douglas Montgomery Foundation's new initiative providing subsidized childcare for working parents in underserved communities, because no one should have to choose between their children and their career. The meeting proceeded, with discussions of quarterly earnings, new development projects, and marketing strategies. I listened more than I spoke, learning, absorbing, asking questions when needed. Alexandra, sitting at my right hand, guided me through the complexities with patience and respect. Afterwards, she pulled me aside. "You're a natural, Christina. You understand what Charles never did, that business isn't just about money. It's about making lives better." "I'm still learning," I admitted. "Some days I feel like an imposter." "We all do," she said with a surprising vulnerability. "Even me, especially in rooms full of men who think they know more than we do. Why did you help me? Alexandra, really, you could have just made your deal with Charles and walked away." She was quiet for a moment. "My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She worked as a hotel maid for 40 years. When she got sick, her employers of 20 years didn't even send a card. They just replaced her. I promised myself that if I ever had power, I'd use it to protect people like her. People like you." I reached out and squeezed her hand. Another ally. Another friend. My world was expanding in ways I'd never imagined. That evening, I returned to my South Philadelphia apartment, the same one I'd lived in for 30 years. I could have moved. Could have bought a mansion in Rittenhouse Square if I'd wanted, but this was home. These walls had witnessed my joys and sorrows, had heard Michael's laughter and Shane's first words. I'd upgraded a few things, a new refrigerator, a better heating system, proper insulation for the windows, but otherwise, it remained unchanged. I was preparing for our third Sunday dinner, chopping vegetables for Michael's famous beef stew, when there was a knock at the door. It was Jasmine, looking tired and uncertain. "I know I'm not expected until Sunday," she said. "But I thought maybe I could help cook." I stepped aside to let her in, hiding my surprise. "Have you ever made beef stew before?" "I've never made anything before," she admitted. "Except reservations." I handed her an apron and a knife. "Chop these carrots. Not too fine, we want chunks, not mush." She was awkward with the knife, unused to kitchen work, but determined. We worked in silence for a while, the only sound the rhythmic chopping and the bubbling of the broth. "Christina," she said finally, "I don't know how to do this. Cooking isn't complicated, you just need practice. Not the cooking, this." She gestured vaguely between us. "Being normal. Being part of a real family. I don't know how. Why did you marry Shane?" I asked her directly. The question seemed to startle her. He was different, kind, solid. All the men I knew were like my father, obsessed with money and status. Empty inside. Shane actually cared about things. About people. "Like Michael," I said softly. "Yes." She looked down at her unevenly chopped carrots. I think I wanted what you and Michael had. But I didn't know how to get it. So I tried to make Shane into something else. Something more like what I understood." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. The most human she'd ever seemed. "Add those to the pot," I instructed her. "Then start on the potatoes. Family is like cooking. Jasmine, you make mistakes, you burn things. Sometimes it's inedible. But you keep trying, and eventually, you create something worth sharing." By the time Shane and Lily arrived, the apartment smelled like Michael's stew. Lily ran to me for her hug, then stopped in surprise. "Mommy, you're cooking, trying to," Jasmine said with a small, genuine smile. "Grandma's teaching me." Shane looked between us, confusion and hope warring on his face. I nodded slightly. "Yes, this is real. Yes, she's trying." We ate around my small kitchen table, the one where Shane had done his homework, where Michael had drawn his business plans, where I'd cried alone for so many years. Now it was full again, crowded, imperfect, alive. After dinner, while Jasmine and Shane washed dishes another first, Lily showed me her school project. "It's about heroes," she explained. We had to pick someone we admire. The poster board was covered in photos and drawings. Me at the flower stand. Me at board meetings. Me teaching her about roses. But in the center was a drawing of a man working on a car. "That's Grandpa Michael," she said. "I never met him, but he's my hero too, because he protected us." I pulled her into a hug, breathing in her strawberry-scented shampoo, now mixed with the faint smell of flowers from helping at my stand. "Grandma, are you crying again?" "Good tears, baby. Always good tears." 3 months after the party, I stood in the boardroom of Douglas Montgomery Group, my boardroom now, looking out at the Philadelphia skyline, the same view Charles had lorded over for decades. But it looked different from where I stood. I could see South Philly in the distance, the neighborhoods where real people lived real lives. The quarterly reports, Mrs. Douglas, my assistant, yes. I had an assistant now handed me a folder. "Thank you, Marcus." It was the same Marcus who'd been the Worthington's driver, who'd sat with me at the servants' table that night. I'd hired him as my executive assistant the first week. He knew everyone's secrets, and, more importantly, he knew what it felt like to be invisible. "Your son is here for the meeting," he said. "And Miss Morgan? Send them in." Shane entered first Shane Douglas again, legally and proudly. He'd lost weight, gained some gray hair, but his eyes were clear in a way they hadn't been in years. "Hi, Mom. Hello, sweetheart." Alexandra followed, elegant as always, but warmer now. A friend rather than just an advisor. "Christina, the foundation numbers are extraordinary. $40 million properly invested will send hundreds of kids to trade schools and colleges." "Michael would have loved that," I said, touching the photo on my desk, Michael and me on our wedding day, both of us young and fearless. "How's Jasmine?" I asked Shane. "She's trying." "Yesterday at the shelter, she actually served food instead of just organizing it. She said one of the women reminded her of someone how she could have been if things had gone differently." We were quiet for a moment, absorbing that. "She wants to know if she can come to Sunday dinner this week," Shane added. "She's always been welcome," I said. She just had to ask. A knock at the door interrupted us. Marcus poked his head in. "Mrs. Douglas, Lily's here with her art project." "Send her in." Lily burst through the door like sunshine, carrying a poster board covered in photos and drawings. "Grandma, I finished it." The project was titled My Hero in glittery letters. There were pictures of me at the flower stand, at board meetings, teaching her to arrange roses. But in the center was a drawing 2 stick figures working on a car. "That's Grandpa Michael teaching Dad about engines," she explained. "Even though I never met him, he's my hero too, because he protected our family." I pulled her into a hug. "Grandma, you're crying again. Good tears, baby. Always good tears." "The board meeting," Alexandra reminded us gently. "Right." I straightened up, keeping Lily's hand in mine. "Let's go make some decisions about our company." "Our company?" Shane asked. "The Douglas Montgomery Group. Michael's name goes first. He earned it." As we walked to the boardroom, Lily skipping beside me, I thought about the journey from that servant's table to this moment. Charles had retired quietly, his empire reduced to a comfortable pension I'd approved. I wasn't cruel, just fair. Jasmine was halfway through her community service, learning slowly that worth wasn't measured in dollars. The legal proceedings against Charles would continue for years, but I'd made it clear that jail time wasn't my goal, accountability was. The boardroom was full investors, partners, employees. As I took my seat at the head of the table with Lily on my lap drawing flowers on my legal pad, no one questioned it. The flower seller from South Philly belonged here, had always belonged here. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "let's talk about the future. The Michael Douglas Foundation has identified 3 vocational schools in need of funding. I propose we match every dollar donated by our employees." "That could cost millions," one board member said. "Then we'd better make sure we earn millions," I replied. Any other questions? There weren't after the meeting. As the sun set over Philadelphia, I stood in my office with Lily, Shane, and Alexandra. Marcus brought in coffee and juice, serving us with the dignity every worker deserved. "You know what Michael used to say," I said, looking at his photo. He said, "The best revenge against people who think you're nothing is to become something they never expected." "What did you become, Grandma?" Lily asked. I thought about it. "Myself, sweetheart. I became myself." "I like yourself," she said, returning to her drawing. "You know what, so do I. And for the first time in 15 years, I meant it. I was Christina Douglas' mother, grandmother, majority shareholder, flower seller. I was all of it, none of it diminished by the other parts. Michael had been right all along. I was worth more than all their money combined." 6 months after that fateful birthday party, I stood in my South Philadelphia apartment, setting the table for Sunday dinner. The same apartment Jasmine once deemed unsafe, now filled with the laughter of family. Real family. "Mom, let me help," Shane said, carrying in the pot roast Michael's recipe, the one he'd learned from his Polish grandmother. "I've got the potatoes," Lily announced, carefully balancing the bowl. Jasmine stood in the doorway, uncertain. She'd lost that perfect polish, her hair in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater from Target. She looked younger, softer, more real. "I brought dessert," she said quietly, holding a homemade apple pie. "I've been practicing." "That looks perfect, dear. Come in." We sat around my small table, crowded and cozy and real. "Grandma, tell the story again," Lily begged. "About the night everything changed. Again, you've heard it a dozen times. Please," so I told it, but this time with all of us adding parts. Shane remembered his shame. Jasmine admitted her fear of never being good enough for the Montgomerys. Even Lily added her confusion about why she couldn't see Grandma. "I was so stupid," Jasmine said, surprising us all. "I had everything, and I couldn't see it. A mother-in-law who would have loved me if I'd let her. A husband who knew what real strength looked like. I threw it all away for what approval from people who don't even call now that Charles is gone. We all made mistakes," I said. "But we're here now." "The shelter wants to offer me a job," Jasmine said suddenly. "Running their job training program, the pay is nothing compared to before. But the women there, they remind me that I could have been them. One bad break, one lost job, one divorce." "Are you going to take it?" Shane asked. "I think so, if Christina..." If Mom thinks it's a good idea. It was the first time she'd called me Mom without being prompted. I think it's perfect, I said. My phone buzzed. Alexandra texting from New York. The foundation just funded its 100th student. Michael would be proud. Yes, he would. After dinner, as Jasmine helped with dishes, something the old Jasmine would have died before doing, Lily pulled out her school report. I got an A+ on my hero project, she announced. The teacher said it was inspiring. She wants to meet you. Grandma, she said you're proof that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Never too late, I repeated, looking at my family broken and mended, like a vase glued back together with gold, more beautiful for having been shattered. Later, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone with Michael's photo. The apartment was quiet, but it was a good quiet, not the silence of abandonment, but the peace after a day well lived. We did it, Michael, I whispered. Not the way we planned, but we did it. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, invisible, forgotten, accepting crumbs and calling them enough. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth wasn't in her bank account or her address, but in her heart, her choices, her refusal to stay small. Tomorrow, I'd go to the flower stand before heading to the office. I'd keep one foot in each world because both were me, the flower seller, and the CEO, the mother-in-law they'd hidden, and the woman who'd brought them to their knees with kindness and truth. Lily's drawing was still on my refrigerator. Me as a superhero. But I wasn't a superhero. I was just a woman who'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. Respect isn't given. It's demanded. And sometimes the universe conspires to help you demand it. Michael always said I was worth more than all their money combined. Turns out he was wrong. I was worth so much more than that. So that's my story, from the woman hidden at the servants' table to the one who owns the whole damn building. Not through luck or magic, but because I finally stopped letting others define my worth. If you've ever been made to feel small, remember this. Your value isn't in their opinion. It's in your heart, your choices, your refusal to accept less than you deserve. Like and subscribe if this story touched you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to demand respect. What would you have done in my place? Tell me below. And remember, you're worth more than all their money combined.